Hello and welcome to Zooming In on Computer Science when you're all zoomed out. My name is Kate Maloney and I'm the Executive Director of the Infosys Foundation USA. Our foundation is focused exclusively on bringing increased access to computer science and maker education for K-12 teachers and students nationally. With me today are two professionals who are working at the front lines to bring these subjects to life. They are both friends of the foundation, having most notably participated in our Pathfinders Institute, a professional development experience for K-12 teachers in these subjects. First, I'd like to introduce Michelle Strickland. She is a teacher of over 250 students at the Trigg County High School in a rural community in Kentucky. She is passionate about maker education and is always looking for ways to challenge her students through design thinking challenges and problem-based learning. She is an HP Teaching Fellow and also has the distinction as a National Geographic and Discovery Education Certified Educator. We also have Adam Maltese, who is a professor of science education at Indiana University, and he's also the co-founder of something really cool called the Maker Educator Collective. So I'm thrilled that both of them can be with us today. As we all know by now, we have witnessed a seismic shift in education over the past 12 months. We have seen teachers go to incredible lengths to teach their students virtually or remotely or through a myriad of hybrid approaches. And we know many of them have felt the urge to quit. There is Zoom fatigue and burnout has been real for both the students and teachers. But the good news is that not all of them have given up. A number of them have in fact come up with innovative approaches to reach students under these circumstances. And Adam and Michelle today, we hope, are going to share with you some of those tips and strategies specifically around bringing computer science and making into the classroom, even under circumstances where there are limited resources. So both Adam and Michelle have very distinct but extremely personal perspectives on this subject. So I want to turn to them and get started. Michelle, I'd love to ask you, if you would, for the audience, share with us a little bit about what your life has looked like over these 12 months. What have been the methods you've been using to reach your students, and maybe a little bit more about the community in which you do teach?
Absolutely. Thank you, Kate. I am so challenged lately by all of these circumstances, just like we all have been, with so many different challenges facing us from every angle, whether it's technology issues and trying to keep our students' attention, or whether it is the illness and coming into our lives and penetrating it in ways we wish it would not. It has been a real challenge. We have really have been trying our best to get students to a point where they would continue to meet with us, to talk with us, but continually fighting that problem with Zoom and trying to find ways to reach out to our students has been challenging. We have purchased servers to try to put out in our community to try to get students to be able to connect to Wi-Fi, and have encouraged them to come to town and sit outside of school or outside of a library. We've gone through a lot of different things trying to get our students to make connections, and some of it has worked, some of it hasn't, just like everyone else has been experiencing, I'm sure, but we continue to strive to try to get our students to get what they need from us and to be able to take part in our education and take part in what we're offering them through our services.
How has your approach to using Zoom changed from the very beginning when COVID hit last spring? You've had that semester, and now we're really into the new academic year. Are there some approaches you've learned and utilized that you see are really effective with these high school students whose attention you're trying to keep?
Well, you know, earlier in the year, before in 2019, before the school year went all crazy, I was really working on trying to keep students' attention because they were so short. Their attention span is so short from watching videos or from watching TikToks. Our students are very into TikToks, and so using a lot of different means to try to get their attention and make short spurts of information available to them so that they would hopefully latch on to some of that and learn what they needed. So it has been an interesting experience, and we have gone through a lot of different things trying to keep their attention through even something simple like taking them off of Zoom and having them work and then take pictures and photos of their creations, their things that they've made through Maker Education or through screenshots, and sending those in so that they were able to be disconnected for a little bit from their computer, and then being able to come back to it and send us the information that they had captured to show us their evidence. It's been a lot of different things that we've done, and that has been successful in terms of trying to get them to spend some time away from their device and then come back to do the things we need them to do that we absolutely have to have them on Zoom for, in Google Meets or whatever we were using at the time.
And we know high school students in particular are very social. So having this disconnect has been particularly challenging. Have you found innovative ways to get them to work in groups? As you say, maybe they go off screen a little bit, but one-to-one or in smaller settings, have you been successful getting them to interact in that way?
You know, it's so interesting. It's very much like when you're at school and you have those groups that you put together and you put them in a chat room and they automatically go to town with this project. They've got it in their mind what they want to do. They're communicating well. And then you've got those students who probably at school would also not have participated the way that you would want them to. And you're fighting that battle of trying to get them back on topic. And so popping into those rooms and trying to keep them on task and throwing in some ideas for how they might start their project or how they might continue to work on what they're working on currently has been an engaging experience. It's been very challenging, but just like at school, you've got to do what you got to do to get their attention. Sometimes it's breaking in and, you know, wearing a funny nose or a hat or something that's going to get their attention and bringing them back to whatever they're doing. Or I've, you know, created TikToks myself to try to get their attention, whatever it takes. It's been an interesting experience for sure.
Well, I know you're also passionate about making. So in a moment, I want to come back and hear a little bit more how you're keeping that makerspace alive. But speaking of making and Adam Maltese, the two words kind of go together. Adam, at the beginning of COVID, you started something really cool called CoBuild19, a great play on words to bring us some positive energy around the pandemic. Can you share a little bit more? What is this program and what was the intention to help us kind of keep teaching making virtually?
Sure, and thanks for having me here. We started thinking about what ways that we could engage kids and families, particularly back in March when things had just gone online in most places. And we knew both through personal contacts and through seeing things on Facebook and other media that families were sort of scrambling. Their spring breaks were probably gone, or those plans fell apart. Schools were shutting down. And so since we were living some of that and seeing some of that locally, thinking that others around the country might be experiencing the same thing. And of course, no one had any idea how it was going to play out. And so we thought, well, what can we do to support families in this time? And the thinking evolved from there to go into how can we create a series of activities how could we create a series of activities that families could use at home, minimal supplies, as a way to break up the day, to get them engaged with one another, or just as enrichment or something for the kids to do when they had extra time. And so we built a team of a couple educational researchers like myself, some folks in STEM education, folks from museums, other folks from other educational entities. And the idea was really to come together and use the collective talents to come up with a series of activities that kids and families could do at home in a variety of topics. Most of them involved some sort of making. There were a lot of design challenges. but the real idea was, what can we get people to do with minimal supplies that and things that they should commonly have around them. When I think about it, really the one special supply that we asked for in one of the activities was red cabbage, so that they could boil the cabbage and create cabbage juice, and then that cabbage juice is an indicator, so it's it will show you the pH of different substances. And so that was really the one thing that we said, you might need to go out for delivery or something. And so in the end, we created about 60 or so activities. Most of them came with a short video that introduced the activity. Some of them had, a facilitator guide or other prompts and questions as part of a PDF or something like that. But ended up using Facebook as the main means to get this out to the public. The group that we started quickly built to over 5,000 members. And the idea was really to share those projects around so that families could look to these as resources to keep their kids engaged. And what's interesting is sort of over time, it has gone a little bit from being activities that families could use to we've gotten the sense that more and more teachers are sort of drawing on these activities as things that they can push out to their kids in class now, so that they could do similar, they could use those activities in a similar way, but this time as part of the curriculum that they're teaching at schools.
In the maker world, lots of the kids and people who want to have maker spaces seem to get really excited about all the fancy materials. They want a ton of 3D printers. They want other equipment that they can hear and engines roaring. And you're now showing that the same approaches to making can really be done virtually. And you don't need to necessarily have all the fancy gadgets to teach the approach. Really the breaking down of how you problem solve, how you come up with solutions, how you feel empowered. And I'm curious, Michelle, building on that, have you kept your makerspace alive for the high school students? And building on what Adam shared, how have you continued to teach those principles even remotely?
It really has been challenging. We have really worked hard to try to keep it alive. We definitely have, we were actually a part of Adam's co-build and trying to get ideas from there and trying to make sure students had things at their house, and also getting together things to send to their house or for them to have to come pick up when they came to pick up things that they needed for the school year. We did all of that. We had packets of art supplies or maker supplies or whatever it might be that students picked up when they picked up their devices or things that they needed from school. We had, I had students scrounge around their home to find things they could take apart. I found programs that were free that were being offered because of our circumstances with COVID. And so I would put my students into those programs and those things to try to work at on their home, and then while they were home, and then send those items to me so that I could 3D print them here while they were at home designing. So we just try to work around the circumstances that we found ourselves in.
That we're hearing, I'm sure everyone who's listening is hearing how devoted teachers are. Back to the point I made at the beginning, you're one of the teachers who hasn't given up, despite maybe having those days when you wish things looked a little bit differently. The point you bring up, Michelle, speaks to equity and the digital divide. And Adam, I feel like you give a lot of thought to that in your everyday work. How do you reach people for whom, masking tape and construction paper and things we may think are in the home may not be? How do we make sure that we are really promoting computer science and making for all, kind of overcoming those barriers?
Yeah, so I appreciate the question. It's a great one, and it's something that we're still grappling with. I wish there was an easy answer. The answer that I have is that it's important to be thoughtful about these things, and we've had a number of conversations with folks around exactly this topic of what can we reasonably expect families to have. And I think a number of educators have been surprised over the last few months when they have assumed that families have certain things, and then realized that many might, but that there are still some out there. And like Michelle was saying, they've come up with different innovative approaches of getting kits out to the families, having sort of tool loans or something like that, just coming up with a variety of ways to do that. At the core of most of those activities, we really tried to make them use those simple materials. And so that should minimize some of those things, but it definitely doesn't get rid of them, get rid of those issues. And so thinking about who you're trying to get to, who you're trying to serve, we were using Facebook as an outreach platform. And we realized even just by doing that, right, we're privileging certain families who use that as a medium of communication. And so actually, one of the things that we're trying to step into actively right now is thinking through how we can gather information from families to understand more of what they do have and what they're looking for. So just to put this out there as an example, we're trying to come up with a way that we might be able to distribute some postcards through food banks or food sharing programs or food programs that are at schools that might give out free lunches or free breakfasts and meals to families, and see if we can sort of get a postcard sent out with those meals that would give a little bit of information to the families, and ask those families that if they're interested in getting kits and materials, that they answer a couple of questions for us. And what we want to know there is some about what they might have access to right now, and then really some ideas about what they might be interested in, so that we can reduce the amount that we're assuming about the families and really try to target some kits and materials and some activities that they might be really interested in. And so I'll get back in touch with you and let you know how that goes. But part of the idea, given that we're doing research and some of us are researchers, is really trying to figure out how we might be able to gather some of this information and then share that out more broadly with educators, in case they don't know some of these things. We can share that information of what we've learned with others so that they can benefit from that.
What you're sharing about innovation, I mean, it really is, and you had mentioned this once to me before, you can't replicate things the way you used to. I mean, each day you're having to come up with more and more and pushing the envelope solutions to reach students and support the teachers. And as we know, the informal setting now in homes where parents are having to learn the subjects maybe a little bit more than they had hoped. But this pressure to continually be responsive. Michelle, you've probably seen with your students as well, there's a social and emotional layer, even when you're teaching computer science or you're trying to keep a makerspace alive. Has that woven into your approach as well and been part of how you get to keep the students engaged?
It really has. It has played such a large role that sometimes I just have my students talk to each other and talk to me. I have kind of given up some days on lessons or things that I thought I wanted them to get out of the experience and just let them talk about what they were feeling. I shared with you, Kate, earlier, we at our school lost a teacher to COVID at the beginning of this year. And so our students were shattered. It was a well-loved teacher, a good friend of mine, and she was a phenomenal educator. And so helping our students deal with the tragedy that happened in our school and dealing with coming back to school and her not being here has been a challenge. And we really have worked hard to try to support our students. We're in the process of doing some things that we hope will support our students and also bring honor to her memory and the things that we're trying to do to support the kids and the way that they feel as they're dealing with all of this. It's been challenging.
Oh, Adam, I'm sure you've seen this as well in the Facebook group that you mentioned being shared by parents, but has that now impacted your approach to teaching making when we go back to quote unquote normal? Have you brought into the fold some of this thinking around how you really connect with people. And again, how we convey this empowerment to be a creator of solutions to everyone's everyday environment.
Yeah, I think there's really no way that we'll be able to move on without it impacting us. I do think that one of the real benefits to an approach that we adopted from the first days was with the focus really on the mindset and the thinking and the doing, but not the technology, that those are things that sort of transcend the access to materials. And it's impossible to make. You can make ideas. It's impossible to make something without some materials. So I don't mean to say that that we can make something out of nothing, but when the focus is on do what you can with whatever you have available, then that changes things in quite a dramatic way from where a lot of the maker conversation often goes, which is what is the fanciest thing you can make, or how can you make something with this advanced technology in a key way. And so again, I think focusing on those roots that can really go beyond this. I think one of the things that we will take with us definitely from COVID is that these, like you said, these approaches do evolve and they change. And I know people have said, we're now seeing Zoom burnout in signing up for virtual activities and things we're trying to host. But this idea of people learning online, it has blown up in the last year in a way that I don't think anyone expected. And so that's not going away anytime soon. And programming and doing things virtually is not going away. And I think it's in some, trying to find silver linings in some ways through the partners that we work with, and then other people we see doing amazing things around the country or around the world. They no longer feel like they're bound by geographic boundaries that they might have around them, or just by their region, people that can come visit their museum or their makerspace. And so it's really exciting to see that there are a lot of people putting programs up online. And I just almost wish that everything else was in a better situation, because now it's sort of this explosion of online and generally free or reduced price programming that people have out there in making and in computer science.
You kind of stole my idea of pivoting to the silver lining of what we've been through. And I think, Michelle, you highlighted you are literally in the trenches with these students, and you've stayed committed. I know there have been so many points that were those moments when maybe you wanted to consider another career, but there are also these kind of opening of the mind toward teaching and education and increased respect for what you put in every day. Adam, you shared a little bit of the silver lining that brings this to life, but Michelle, to start the close of this conversation, if you could share if you think there really is a silver lining, or what is an unexpected benefit that you're taking from this past year.
I think probably the biggest benefit is just the way our students have really grown together, even though we've had to be apart. I've had to rearrange my classroom like everyone has, and have 6 feet between each of my students, and cut down the number of students that I could have in order to meet that qualification. And then trying to divide out students that are virtual and in person, and trying to work through all that, and trying to get the information to the students who are virtual, and making sure that they're on the same page. I think the silver lining has just been the renewed excitement I have for the way my students have responded to the challenge. There are many of them who have really been willing to do whatever I've asked them to do. If I need you to email this person, or I need you to text this person because I can't get in touch with them, they won't respond to my email, or they won't respond on Remind, or whatever it might be. I need you to go to their house if you have to get them to look at their email and answer me, or to figure out a way to contact me. And there for a while, I had a computer and an iPad and a phone, and I had everything where students were communicating with me in different ways. And I just think their persistence to try to make sure that they are getting what they need from me has been really a good thing that has come out of this, and more of their dedication to get the education that they deserve, and then their renewed excitement to try to pursue that, even though it's been a challenge for them.
Thank you for sharing that. And like all good panels at events, they end too quickly. So sticking to the time that we've been given, I just want to thank you both for candidly sharing your experience. And I hope those listening have taken away those tips and strategies, or they want to speak to you more. They find you through the networking features of the conference. So thank you again, and look forward to seeing you next week at Pathfinders. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.